But how long were you with the radio now?
Well, so Wayne Wisenhut put me on the air, and I was 15 years old. This is 1967. I'm a green pea. I'm in the 9th grade.
Well, that's great. Okay.
And I guess my voice had changed where I didn't sound like this when I was on the air. And a lot of people, I'd meet people go, "That's you?" You know, because I was small and all that stuff. But we had, but see, to work at a radio station, and if you were there by yourself, there had to be an engineer there back then. There had to be an engineer there on site in case something malfunctioned at the station. And if the station malfunctioned, it would interfere with other radio stations. And so you had to have an engineer degree. They called it a third-class phone. It was a license through the FCC that you knew how to operate that equipment in regular maintenance and emergencies. Well, you had to study for a test to do this. All the other guys had it, so I worked weekends, and I was there by myself. Nobody was going to show up on weekends to watch me. So, Wayne, you got to go get your FCC third-class phone license. How do you do that? And it was, so they gave me, the station had copies of this little book, how to study for the test. So I studied for the test. My mom, I still wasn't 16. My mom had to drive me down to downtown Tulsa in the Federal Building, and I went up and took a test. And I get there, and there's the door wasn't open yet, and there was 4 or 5 guys sitting out in the hall, hanging around. And one guy was there. He was maybe 20 or something like that. He was dressed in a suit and a vest and looked real sharp. And he had a book that said answers to the FCC third-class license test. And I'm thinking, he's got the answers there? Wow. And so I asked him, I said, "Man, where'd you get that book?" He said, "Oh, I bought this after I flunked it for the 3rd time." Scared me to death. I'm a 15-year-old hick from the hayfields, and I'm taking this test. So we go in the room, there's like maybe 20 guys in the room, and there's an older man as the teacher or guide fella, and he passes them out, and he looks at us and he goes, "All right, no cheating. If you get caught, I'll throw you out." And then he said, "When you're done, bring it up to me." So he sat there and he was reading something, and occasionally he'd look up, you know. And so I'm sitting there, so okay, I'm taking off. And about 80%, I know this one. And so I was doing great. And then I looked behind me, this guy was like a row over, a couple of guys behind me. I looked over like that. This guy's got his tie askewed.
That's the one with the answers.
His vest unbuttoned. He had his hand in his hair going like this on this test, and I'm going. And I'm like, I'm done. I'm finished. And this guy with all the answers looks like, you know, what's going to happen next? So I go, I better go over it again. And nobody had finished. And I thought, don't be first. So I went over my answers again, and I think I got it. And nobody's taking them up. And so, oh man. So then I remember my mom was outside in the parking lot in the car. And I better go. You know, you don't want to keep your mom waiting. So another guy had gone up. So, okay, I went. And so I gave him the test, and there was a chair next to him that faced back toward the classroom. And he said, "Sit down there. I can't grade it in front of you." Well, I was 2 inches from him, and I was looking the other way. And so he says, "Okay." I was there maybe 30 seconds. He goes, "Okay, you passed." "What?" I said, well, what was my grade? "Oh, you missed one. You passed. We'll mail you this certificate." So as I walk out the door, I look back at this poor old guy. He's still there. He's got his pencil and he's erasing stuff. So I never knew what happened to that guy. But so I'm 15 years old and I'm licensed to work at radio stations with, you know, no engineer there and this kind of. I still have that. They don't require that license anymore, but I still have mine at home.
Still have yours?
It's a point of pride. I did something.
Okay. So when did you leave the station?
I left in January of 1973. After high school, I worked at KWPR all through high school.
You graduated in 70.
Graduated in 1970, and I went up to OMA.
OMA.
It was still OMA at that time. I'd get off of out of school, and I would come back in my uniform, my cadet uniform, and run the show with my uniform on, and worked there. We did football games, and then I started announcing the games, and we would take it on a tape recorder. And if anybody's ever been in broadcasting, they'll know what a Wallensack is. It was a tape recorder made in the 50s that's probably as big as some car trunks today. It was huge, weighed about 50 pounds, but you could drop it off a building and it would still work. Had great quality. It was excellent. The microphone was excellent. So we would record the football game and play it back on Saturday morning. And the audience was great because they would want to hear, oh, little Johnny ran for a touchdown in the second quarter. I want to hear that.
Well, the players themselves got to hear it.
That's right. They got to hear it.
They could hear their own name being.
I was kind of a little hero to the coaches at the high school. Like, hey, Mac, call me Mac or something like that. Mac, that's a pretty good job you did on Friday night. Well, thanks, Coach. You know, I couldn't play football. I was too little. I'd snap in half. But God, the coaches liked me. That was a big deal.
Yeah.
So I continued to do that while I was up at OMA.
And they'd play it back Saturday morning.
Saturday
Did we
morning.
say that?